Artificial intelligence brings immense benefits to our society. However, in order to enjoy these benefits, we must ensure that the potential negative effects associated with the technology are mitigated. Through general policies and sanctions, we can ensure the right behavior we want to see in our society. Decentralizing governance to the national level and properly educating the public about artificial intelligence can be effective to circumvent the unintended negative consequences of poor governance.
I think artificial intelligence is bringing new challenges and putting pressure on public institutions to change. And this is happening because the private sector is driving the transformation of its traditional businesses towards new data-driven business models. But it's not only about leading technological development, but also leading on regulatory matters. And I think it's important to set up an ethical framework that will enable us to develop a people-centric artificial intelligence, always with respect for ethical and democratic values.
One of the biggest challenges that algorithmic governance and artificial intelligence systems already present and will present is the respect of human rights. To be part of this journey, to ensure that human rights violations, risks are taken into account, mitigated, and sometimes repaired, we need to look at which structures we have built and interrogate them, and we need to imagine together how we can do better.
I think the major problems algorithmic governance and artificial intelligence are going to present for the future society and the global order can be divided into three. One, problems stemming from the absence of contextual analysis. Two, disputes about what constitutes beneficial and responsible uses of AI and gender-based violence.
The massive adoption of AI can make it an appealing target for abuse and misuse. This adoption cannot continue unless AI systems are safe, secure, and trusted by users. Unfortunately, industry and governments currently do not know how to secure their AI systems. To trust AI, we need to understand questions such as, what data do we have? Where does it come from? How is the data being altered?
I will look at this from three perspectives. One thing is that there has been so many AI policy and governance frameworks produced in the last couple of years. It has been hard to find common ground out there. Second thing is that the technologies that has been developed are spreading around the world. It doesn't really matter in which countries they have been built. And the third thing, most important, is responsibility part, that each side of the chain has to really understand their own responsibility, whether it's private sector, a policymaker, or the user.
Statistical decisions can be unjust because they are inaccurate. They can be unjust because they show a lack of equal concern for individuals. But they can also be unjust because they give us no choice about how to live our lives, because they replace that choice with a prediction. And that problem is compounded by the use of proprietary algorithms. Policymakers and judges must take this problem seriously and recognize that it cannot be fixed simply through the use of human oversight of particular algorithmic decisions. We need to design and use algorithms appropriately in a justified manner in the first place.
AI has the potential to transform the global order along very different dimensions. First, given AI's significant potential in the economic and military realm, it may alter the balance of power between states, leading some new states to rise in the system and others to decline. However, by giving more access to AI to some states over others, it may also increase inequality between nations. And lastly, AI may also lead to the creation of new spheres of influence, leading to a bifurcation of the global order between authoritarian and democratic systems.
It's not about making algorithms trustworthy, but about creating trust in the people and institutions behind them and using them. Only if we take up the responsibility for the decisions made, we can help to shape the future societies.
The main challenges of algorithmic governance that I see are three. First, the lack of standardized risk assessment frameworks. Second, the constant competition between the growth and safety within companies who are developing these models. And third, the limited collaboration between social sciences and technical disciplines, which I think is critical to solve this problem.
So I think the biggest challenges that AI and algorithmic governance are going to create in the next 10 years in terms of the global social order is around how citizens can both have independence in their free choice and be able to be, actually have their own choices versus being nudged by algorithms to buy certain products or be friends with certain people or think in a certain way. So I think freedom of choice is the most important challenge for AI in the next 10 years.
We need to keep using AIs as mere advisors and do not accept their responses blindly. Meanwhile, research should focus on the development of algorithms that can help us without the need of humans creating or labeling the data that AI uses to learn, so that we can minimize forwarding our own biases and beliefs and achieve algorithms that can provide truly novel advice. Moreover, as AI is increasingly used in our lives, we should focus on developing models that can both give us an answer to a problem and also explain to humans why their proposed solution is better than what we have now.
In the next 10 to 20 years, we will see AI become even more powerful than today. And with that, we have a fundamental responsibility, but also a chance to get AI right, to design AI the way we want it to be. The most challenging part is still waiting for us, ensuring that we can build AI in line with our values. How do we build AI that is reliable? How do we build AI that we can trust? We have both fundamental technical and governance challenges to solve.
If we want to build a fully equal and inclusive digital world, we need to make sure that diversity actually exists in the development of AI and algorithmic systems. To overcome biases, the first step is to include in the process people who can actually spot these biases. We're talking about women, we're talking about people coming from ethnic minorities and people with disabilities, for instance. But we also need to involve people, professionals from humanities, philosophers, historians, sociologists. These are all professions that have a bright future because these are the ones that can give algorithms the human pulse that we so badly need.
We have a technical challenge. We need to align AI systems with human preferences. And here, the technical and the policy communities need to work together to ensure that we have safe and reliable AI. We also have a policy challenge, how to ensure that we don't have a race to the bottom in terms of safety and ethics, and countries should agree here on a set of principles and policies.
In my view, some of the challenges for the future society and the global order are related to securing the rule of law in the digital world, ensuring accountability and responsibility, proper governance of data, achieving a world where the power to develop AI technologies is not concentrated in the hands of few, and broadly implementing overarching ethics in practice.
The computational processes at work in autonomous machine learning and AI systems are beyond full human vision and control. This forces us to think beyond human-centric approaches to AI and algorithmic governance and consider fundamental questions about the boundaries between human and machine. Who and what counts as human and machine, and how are these boundaries defined, maintained, and transformed? Which understandings of the human and the machine will form the basis for future society, increasingly driven by algorithmic governance and AI?
I identify three distinct challenges. The first is to make sure that governance institutions remain capability scalable, so they can adapt to the changing technologies, uses, or societal impacts of AI technology. The second is to make sure that we adequately govern the use of AI technology in international law, whether to create or to enforce regimes. The third challenge has to do with avoiding norm conflicts or the fragmentation of the global governance architecture as a result of conflicts between how we govern AI in existing bodies of law.
I believe that one of the biggest challenge that we'll be facing when it comes to artificial intelligence is to create appropriate regulatory and governance frameworks for these technological systems that not only put people, their rights and needs forward, but also that of the planet.
What I think we perceive about an AI product today is really related to data. For example, stereotype bias such as racial or gender biases are not really related to the technology, but are really much more related to the data which is used by the algorithm itself. I think that the idea of the garage startup, which started developing for few resources, kind of conflicts with the current concept of an AI company. I think that if you want to rule AI, you first have to rule your data.
Speaking as a jurist, one of the most pressing challenges is determining if and how to change existing law to best accommodate societal changes brought on by the use of AI systems in a way that is conducive to fair future societies, which safeguard the interests of all parties concerned in a balanced way.
So who gets to decide when and how powerful algorithms are used, the parameters used in their design, and just as importantly, who is responsible when human rights or the public interest are harmed by AI systems? There are three principles that governments need to follow in introducing new regulation. Firstly, we need red lines codified in law. Some uses of AI are simply too high risk to ever be compatible with human rights. Second, there has to be proper oversight, including audit powers, so that regulators can lift the hood and take a look at the engine. And third, anyone who deploys an AI system in any setting that could put rights at risk must carry out a mandatory human rights impact assessment beforehand.
The emergence of algorithmic governance and artificial intelligence makes rethinking the relationship between public administrations, disruptive technologies, and citizens a necessity. First, we need to develop a strong legal framework so we can assure that the adoption of AI technologies in the public sector is done following certain ethical rules and standards and in accordance with our European values. Second, governments and public administrations need to be able to explain to citizens why they are adopting these technologies, how these technologies work, and what are their rights as citizens in relation to these technologies.
Challenges around algorithmic governance is one to ensure democratic rule setting, to have transparency on the use, when are these systems applied, how can we ensure inclusiveness, that affected ones have their vote, that they are on the table, and accountability to ensure who is accountable. And for that, we need engagement of individuals, users, politicians, and developers to take responsibility and understand the challenges and to anticipate these.
In my view, one of the most pressing challenges that artificial intelligence will pose to the global order would be an intensification of the rivalry between the two major powers, especially US and China, that will result in forms of cyber colonialism, especially to the detriment of African countries.
So in terms of the challenges ahead, certain inherent characteristics of AI raise significant ethical and safety concerns. Without appropriate oversight, AI can be used for surveillance and political manipulation, undermining privacy and democratic processes. And this is why on a global scale, the challenge to come up with efficient and suitable governance frameworks will be key to guide the development of safe, trustworthy, but also more sustainable AI.
Artificial intelligence is becoming more and more important in our daily lives and will be essential in many sectors in the future. But in order to safely enjoy its full potential, we need to trust it. But how can we trust it if there are no rules and transparency? I believe that the EU's human-centric approach to technology is the right way to go. Human rights and democratic values must be, by design, at the core of any use and development of new digital technologies.
So to tackle the challenges that we face with the ubiquitous use of AI, we first of all need to ensure education, not just about the benefits, but also about the risks of this technology to ask the right critical questions. Second, we need to consider not just individual harm, but also societal harm raised by AI, especially harm over the longer term. And third, we need global cooperation on concrete, enforceable legal rules for AI governance rather than just pretty words.
Overall, we are at a political and legal momentum to regulate AI and strike the delicate balance between finding creative and trustworthy solutions to solve global challenges and mitigating the negative impact of AI systems. Involving AI systems should be done realistically, with a focus on applying safeguards on human rights and transparency to all AI systems, and on preserving democracy and the rule of law, irrespective of their level of risk.
Artificial intelligence algorithms are more and more common every day, and they are one of the keys in the process of decision making. And that's cool and dangerous at the same time. Because yeah, neither humans or machines are perfect. And you know what? Neither won't be perfect in the future. We just need to ensure that future algorithms, trainings, especially the delicate ones, are less biased as possible and doesn't exclude any point of view from the society, especially the ones from the minority groups.
While algorithmic governance of AI systems is a difficult prospect given their self-learning capabilities, we need to have an explicit orientation of governance by design to ensure that AI systems are regulated by their architectures themselves. This is a design issue, and adopting a design approach that centers human values and monitors a system across its full life cycle is the best way forward to ensure that AI systems remain under meaningful human control.
The future of algorithmic governance needs to supervise the quality of the data, to avoid opacity in the results obtained, and to think and rethink the process of the whole machine learning or deep learning pipeline through interdisciplinary teams and looking for explainability, because this is not just a competition to get the best accuracy out of the model. And this is about dealing with people's rights.
One of the main challenges is going to be the potential unemployment crisis. Unlike the technologies that fueled the industrial revolutions, AI will not break down advanced tasks done by a specialized group of people into simpler ones, where a larger pool of workers can find jobs. Instead, multitude of jobs will be decimated in the process. And while massive productivity will emerge from the automation of profit-generating tasks, it has been shown that productivity gains no longer correlate with employment or salary since around the 70s. So unless we do something about it, where does this leave us?
I think there are three medium-specific characteristics that complicate algorithmic accountability. So first of all, algorithmic systems are non-neutral. They are one of many possible implementations. Secondly, as we favor one implementation over another, we also temporally lock in particular values and norms. Thirdly, it's hard and costly to reorient algorithmic systems.
According to my expertise and my knowledge, I see the main challenge of artificial intelligence and automation in the fact that it might fundamentally change the understanding of security. And therefore, it might pose new security threats to our society, to our political order that we're yet unprepared for.